members of the jury, you will hear today that Chase Covington chose corruption. On October 1st, 2014, the Midlands Gambling Commission, chaired by the defendant, Chase Covington, announced that they would be giving out one new casino license in the state of Midlands. Now, since Chase Covington only gives out one license every 10 years, Avery Bancroft, local casino owner and successful business person, jumped at the opportunity. She jumped at the opportunity to expand her empire. And on October 1st was the day where our case began. Because on April 16, 2015, Avery Bancroft bribed Chase Covington with an acceptance by Chase Covington to vote for Avery Bancroft's new casino. And that's why we're here today. Over the course of those 6 months, Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft exchanged emails, text messages, phone calls, along with personal meetings to discuss the new casino. Now, it wasn't just discussion about the merits of the proposal, but rather it was the discussion about a bribe, something that Avery Bancroft could do extra to win the defendant's vote. And members of the jury, in doing so, the defendant had 3 options. The defendant could vote for Avery Bancroft's casino. The defendant could vote for Shannon Stark's casino, another proposal and poker player in the area, or the defendant could choose corruption. And you'll hear today that the defendant chose corruption. So the legal situation we have here and why we're in court today is to determine whether or not the defendant accepted a bribe from Avery Bancroft. Now, we as the state bear a burden of proof. We must prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, a doubt based in common sense and reason, that the defendant accepted a bribe. Now, the elements in this case can be summed up in 2 questions. First, did the defendant accept something of value from Avery Bancroft in return for his vote? And 2, did the defendant have the intent for that something of value to influence the vote? Now, with those questions in mind, as you think them through throughout the remainder of the trial, by the end of the trial, you'll notice that the answer to both of these questions is yes, because the defendant chose corruption. Now, to prove our case to you today, beyond this reasonable doubt, we'll bring forth 3 witnesses. First, we'll call Detective Mickey Keenan to the stand. Detective Keenan will tell you all about the Midlands Gambling Commission and how he was undercover with the commission and worked for the defendant. He'll tell you that because of the proposals, the defendant should not have voted for Avery Bancroft's casino. He'll also talk about the finances of the defendant and how we know the defendant covered up the acceptance of money. Now, this will leave you wondering how we know there was actually a bribe, an actual exchange of money. So we'll call Dr. Pat Sikorsky. Dr. Sikorsky will tell you how we know, based on forensic science, that Chase Covington accepted a bribe through a briefcase. That there was actually a briefcase exchange that went from Avery Bancroft's hands to Chase Covington's hands with $200,000 in it. She'll tell you, based on the evidence she found, how we know for a fact Chase Covington accepted a bribe and chose corruption. And finally, we'll call the defendant's stepsister, who explain to you how we know for a fact that the defendant had the capability of doing something so heinous as to violate the rules of her job, his job, as he is a public official. His job is to maintain the community and to make sure that the gambling community is respected and upheld. And Ms. Tracy Manitos will tell you how we know that the defendant violated this, how we know the defendant covered up the finances, and how we know that the defendant went to the casino on April 16th not to gamble, but to exchange briefcases and accept a bribe. Now, by the end of this trial, my co-counsel Jordan Smith will come before you and put the pieces together. He'll lay out all the reasons how we know for a fact that the defendant chose corruption. And throughout all the testimony you'll hear, it will be clear that Chase Covington chose corruption over doing his job. Thank you.